Amazing Grace, the song that saved a wretch like me. There are few songs on earth that speak directly to the soul the way Amazing Grace does. Its simple words, I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see, have echoed through centuries, across oceans, and into the hearts of millions. But behind this beloved hymn lies one of the most dramatic stories of personal transformation ever told. The story of John Newton, a man who went from being a slave trader to a preacher, and from a self-proclaimed wretch to the writer of one of the world's most powerful songs of redemption. A troubled beginning. John Newton was born in 1725 in Wapping, near the River Thames in London. His father was a sea captain, often away for long periods, and his mother, a devout Christian, dreamed her son would one day become a minister. But when John was only 6, she died of tuberculosis. Her death left him lost and angry. His father remarried, but his new stepmother was cold and distant. Young John grew up feeling unloved and unwanted. By 11, he was at sea, working as an apprentice sailor under his father's command. The sea became his home, but it also became the stage for a life of rebellion and recklessness. On board those ships, John's heart grew hard. He mocked religion and boasted of his unbelief. Later, he would write that he had renounced the hopes and comforts of the gospel at the very time when every other comfort was about to fail. He was, in every sense, a young man adrift, physically and spiritually. A descent into darkness. Newton's wild spirit soon got him into trouble. After disobeying orders in the Royal Navy and attempting to desert, he was captured, flogged with 96 lashes, and demoted to a common seaman. Humiliated, he fled once again, this time joining a ship bound for the West African coast, where he entered the most brutal trade of his century, the Atlantic slave trade. At first, he worked for slave merchants, capturing and selling human beings like cargo. But his arrogance and temper made enemies even among his fellow traders. Eventually, he was left behind on the coast of Sierra Leone, abandoned, enslaved, and treated cruelly by an African princess who owned slaves herself. For months, he lived in misery, beaten and starved, tasting for the first time what it meant to be utterly powerless. Later in life, Newton would call himself a wretch, not only because of what he had done to others, but also because of how low he had fallen. The storm that changed everything. In 1748, Newton's father arranged his passage home to England aboard the merchant ship Greyhound, hoping to rescue his son from the destructive path he was on. But off the coast of Ireland, Newton faced the moment that would change his life forever. A violent storm struck and the ship began to break apart. Water poured through a gaping hole in the hull. Sailors were swept overboard. The crew panicked. Newton was ordered to the helm. In the chaos, both of his hands were tied to the wheel, so he could steer without being thrown into the sea. For 11 desperate hours, he fought the storm, soaked to the bone, freezing winds slicing into his skin, every wave threatening to drag the ship under. Then something miraculous happened. A large portion of the cargo shifted inside the hold and lodged itself directly against the hole in the hull, plugging it and slowing the flooding. The men on board knew how rare, almost impossible, such an event was. Newton believed that God himself had intervened. When all seemed lost, he cried out the first true prayer he had spoken in years. "Lord, have mercy on us." The Greyhound's survival that night marked the beginning of Newton's spiritual awakening. He began to read the Bible and examine his life. March 21st, 1748, the night of the storm, became his personal anniversary of conversion, a day he remembered for the rest of his life. From slave trader to servant of God. Despite this powerful experience, Newton didn't change overnight. He continued to work in the slave trade for several more years, even commanding his own slave ships. But something inside him had begun to shift. He started treating the enslaved with more sympathy, writing in his journal about the horrors he witnessed. Finally, in 1754, after suffering a stroke, Newton gave up seafaring for good. He married Mary Catlett, a woman whose steadfast faith had long inspired him, and began to study theology. Reading The Imitation of Christ deepened his conviction that he had been living in sin. In 1764, Newton was ordained as a priest in the Church of England. Assigned to a small parish in Olney, Buckinghamshire, he became known for his passionate sermons and heartfelt compassion. Parishioners said his words came not from the pulpit, but from the heart of a man who had been to hell and back. The birth of Amazing Grace. In Olney, Newton met the poet William Cowper, and together they compiled the Olney Hymns, 1779. Among them was a hymn Newton wrote for a New Year's Day sermon in 1773, a personal reflection on his life and deliverance by God's grace. It began, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." These lines were not mere poetry, they were Newton's confession. Every word carried the weight of his past and the wonder of his redemption. He had enslaved others, but had himself been enslaved by sin. And now, through grace, he was free. The fight against slavery. As Newton's influence grew, so did his sense of responsibility. He joined forces with William Wilberforce, the Member of Parliament leading the fight to abolish the slave trade. In 1788, Newton published Thoughts upon the Slave Trade, describing the horrific conditions aboard slave ships and publicly repenting of his role. The pamphlet spread widely and was read in Parliament. 19 years later, in 1807, the Slave Trade Act passed. Newton was still alive, but nearly blind and suffering from severe memory loss. Though he may not have fully understood the political victory, those around him saw the moment as deeply symbolic. The former slave ship captain lived just long enough to witness the end of the trade he once served. He died that same year at age 82, saying, "I remember two things, that I am a great sinner and that Christ is a great Savior."
The American Voice, the New Britain Melody. Though written in England, Amazing Grace found its true home across the Atlantic. During the early 19th century, as waves of revival swept through America, preachers used the song in their gatherings. It became especially popular among the poor and the enslaved, who understood its message of hope and deliverance. In 1835, American composer William Walker paired Newton's lyrics with a haunting Southern folk melody called New Britain. Walker published it in his collection, The Southern Harmony, a hymnal written in the shape-note singing tradition, a grassroots American musical style that emphasized raw, communal harmony over trained voices. Sung in open four-part chords, often a cappella, the sound was rough yet transcendent. This new pairing gave Amazing Grace a distinctly American soul, a cry both human and divine. From that moment, Amazing Grace began its journey into every corner of American life. Amazing Grace and the Trail of Tears. One of the most haunting chapters in the hymn's history came in the 1830s, when the Cherokee Nation was forced to leave its ancestral lands in the southeastern United States. Under the Indian Removal Act, about 15,000 Cherokee men, women, and children were made to walk nearly 1,000 miles to what is now Oklahoma, a journey remembered as the Trail of Tears. More than 4,000 died from hunger, disease, and exhaustion. Denied the chance to bury their dead, survivors often sang Amazing Grace in quiet mourning. Its words, "I once was lost, but now am found," echoed with tragic irony and spiritual defiance. For the Cherokee, the song became a symbol of endurance and faith amid unimaginable loss. To this day, it is considered the unofficial national anthem of the sovereign Cherokee Nation. From hymn to pop music. Over time, Amazing Grace crossed every boundary, racial, cultural, and religious. It became the sound of healing in times of crisis. During the Civil War, both Union and Confederate soldiers sang it. During the Vietnam War, anti-war protesters turned it into a song of peace. After September 11th, the mournful drone of bagpipes carried its melody across America's grief. In the 1970s, folk singer Judy Collins became the unexpected voice that carried Amazing Grace into modern popular culture. She did not originally think of it as a church hymn. She remembered it as a simple folk song her grandfather used to sing. During an intense encounter group session about the Vietnam War, tensions ran high. Someone suggested that everyone sing together to calm the room. Amazing Grace was the only song all of them knew. The moment deeply moved Collins, and her producer urged her to record it for her next album. Collins crafted an unforgettable arrangement, a cappella, recorded in St. Paul's Chapel at Columbia University for its natural echo, with a small chorus entering only in the final verses. The minimalist, haunting structure made the song stand out on radio and gave the old hymn a fresh emotional power. Her version stayed on the charts for 67 weeks, peaking at number 5, and sparked a revival of the hymn across genres: gospel, pop, country, and beyond. Soon, legendary artists like Aretha Franklin, Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, and Mahalia Jackson recorded their own renditions. By the 21st century, Amazing Grace had been recorded more than 11,000 times, making it one of the most widely recorded songs in history, rivaling even the Beatles' Yesterday. It appears on albums spanning gospel, jazz, country, and pop, and has been performed an estimated 10 million times every year. Ironically, many who sang it didn't know its sacred origins. Yet through their voices, the song carried its message farther than Newton could ever have dreamed. That grace, the unearned love and mercy of God, can reach anyone, anywhere. A legacy of grace. More than 2 centuries have passed since John Newton penned those simple lines, yet Amazing Grace continues to resonate. It has been sung in cathedrals and prisons, at weddings and funerals by choirs, soldiers, and ordinary people who find hope in its melody. Newton's life proves a profound truth. No one is beyond redemption. He who once chained others found himself freed not by justice, but by mercy. Perhaps that is why Amazing Grace still moves us. It reminds us that even the darkest heart can be made new, that forgiveness is real, and that grace, amazing grace, is still the sweetest sound on earth.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Wretch. Definition: a person in a very unhappy, miserable, or unfortunate state. Example: after losing everything, he felt like a lonely wretch with nowhere to go. 2. Redemption. Definition: the act of being saved from past mistakes or wrongdoings. Example: he sought redemption by changing his life and helping others. 3. Distant. Definition: not emotionally close, cold, or unresponsive. Example: her distant attitude made it hard for others to get to know her. 4. Apprentice. Definition: a person who learns a skill or trade by working with an experienced teacher. Example: as an apprentice carpenter, he watched his master carefully every day. 5. Adrift. Definition: lost or without direction, either emotionally or physically. Example: after graduation, he felt adrift and unsure of what to do next. 6. Lash. Definition: to strike or hit someone or something with a whip or rope. Also to tie something tightly. Example: the sailors had to lash the cargo down so it wouldn't move during the storm. 7. Demoted. Definition: moved to a lower rank or position as punishment or consequence. Example: he was demoted after repeatedly disobeying orders. 8. A gaping hole. Definition: a very large, wide opening, often created by damage. Example: the explosion left a gaping hole in the side of the building. 9. Hull. Definition: the main body of a ship, including the sides and bottom. Example: water rushed into the hull after the boat struck a rock. 10. Helm. Definition: the steering wheel or equipment used to guide a ship. Example: the captain stood at the helm, directing the ship through the waves. 11. Seafaring. Definition: related to working or traveling on the sea. Example: his seafaring life took him to ports all around the world. 12. For good. Definition: permanently, forever. Example: after years of traveling, she returned home for good. 13. Steadfast. Definition: firm, loyal, and dependable, not changing in support or belief. Example: her steadfast friendship helped him through difficult times. 14. Deliverance. Definition: the act of being rescued from danger or suffering. Example: they prayed for deliverance from the long and terrible storm. 15. Abolish. Definition: to officially put an end to something, especially a law or practice. Example: many leaders worked tirelessly to abolish the unfair system. 16. Repenting. Definition: feeling deep regret for wrongdoing and wanting to change. Example: after repenting of his past mistakes, he tried to live more responsibly. 17. Haunting. Definition: beautiful in a sad, unforgettable way, hard to forget. Example: the haunting melody stayed in her mind long after the song ended. 18. Grassroots. Definition: coming from ordinary people in a community, rather than leaders or officials. Example: the movement began as a grassroots effort among local farmers. 19. Communal. Definition: shared by a group of people, done together. Example: they prepared a communal meal that everyone helped cook. 20. Transcendent. Definition: something so exceptional that it goes beyond normal experience. Example: the choir's transcendent performance moved the entire audience to tears. 21. Drone. Definition: a low, continuous humming or buzzing sound. Example: the drone of the bagpipes filled the air with solemn music. 22. Encounter. Definition: an unexpected meeting with someone or something. Example: his encounter with an old friend brought back many memories. 23. A cappella. Definition: music performed without any instrumental accompaniment. Example: the group sang an a cappella version of the anthem that impressed everyone. 24. Stand out. Definition: to be easily noticed because something is special or different. Example: her bright red coat made her stand out in the crowd. 25. Rendition. Definition: a particular version or performance of a song, poem, or story. Example: his soulful rendition of the hymn brought the audience to silence. 26. Resonate. Definition: to produce a strong emotional response, or feel meaningful to someone. Example: the story resonated with readers who had experienced similar struggles. 27. The hold. Definition: the lower part of a ship used for storing cargo, supplies, or equipment. Example: the sailors climbed down into the hold to check whether water was leaking in during the storm.
Comprehension questions. 1. Who wrote the hymn Amazing Grace? Answer: it was written by John Newton, an English poet and Anglican clergyman, in 1773. 2. What major event in John Newton's life led him to begin his spiritual transformation? Answer: a violent storm at sea in 1748. When his ship nearly sank off the coast of Ireland, he cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us," and later saw his survival as a sign from God. 3. Before becoming a clergyman, what kind of work did Newton do that he later regretted deeply? Answer: he worked as a slave trader, capturing and selling enslaved Africans during the Atlantic slave trade. 4. What personal experience inspired the words that saved a wretch like me? Answer: Newton saw himself as a moral wretch because of his past sins, especially his participation in slavery, and felt that only God's grace could have saved him. 5. What was the name of the hymn book where Amazing Grace first appeared? Answer: it appeared in the Olney Hymns, a collection compiled by John Newton and poet William Cowper in 1779. 6. Who was William Cowper, and what was his role in the story? Answer: William Cowper was a poet and Newton's friend. Together, they wrote and compiled hymns for their congregation in Olney. 7. What was the New Britain melody, and why is it important? Answer: New Britain is the American folk melody that became the tune for Amazing Grace in 1835. It came from the shape note singing tradition, a grassroots, communal style of harmony singing common in the American South. 8. What is shape note singing? Answer: it's a traditional American way of reading and singing music. using differently shaped notes to represent pitches. It emphasizes strong, raw harmony and community participation, rather than professional polish. 9. What major political or moral cause did John Newton support later in his life? Answer. He became a leading voice in the abolition of the slave trade, supporting reformers like William Wilberforce, and writing influential pamphlets against slavery. 10. What was the name of the pamphlet Newton wrote to expose the horrors of the slave trade? Answer. It was called Thoughts Upon the Slave Trade, published in 1788. 11. What connection does Amazing Grace have with the Cherokee Nation? Answer. During the Trail of Tears 1838-1839. When the Cherokee were forced to march from their homelands in the southeast to Oklahoma, they sang Amazing Grace to mourn their dead and find comfort. Today it is considered their unofficial national anthem. 12. How did Amazing Grace become part of American culture beyond religion? Answer. It was sung in revivals, wars, and protests. It became a song of comfort during the Civil War, the Vietnam War, and even after 9/11, crossing religious and cultural boundaries. 13. Which famous singer's version made Amazing Grace a pop hit in the 1970s? Answer. Judy Collins. Her version stayed on the Billboard Top 100 for 67 weeks and reached number 5. 14. Approximately how many times has Amazing Grace been recorded? And what does this signify? Answer. It has been recorded over 11,000 times, making it one of the most widely recorded songs in history, a testament to its universal message of hope and redemption. 15. What is the central message or theme of Amazing Grace? Answer. The hymn expresses that no one is beyond redemption, that through faith and grace, even the most lost or sinful person can be forgiven and made new.